Welcome to my Jane Austen book club. Today, we're diving into a gorgeous watercolor-styled explainer of Amy George's fascinating romantasy variation, His Dark Heart. If you've ever wondered what would happen if the classic manners and drawing rooms of Regency England just, collided head-on with a world of dark magic and crazy high stakes, well, you are in exactly the right place today. I am so thrilled to guide you through this wild reimagining of a literary masterpiece. Now, before we get into the really dark stuff, let's ground ourselves in our shared love for Jane Austen's legacy. As she wrote in Northanger Abbey, there is no enjoyment like reading, right? And one of the absolute greatest joys of Austen's enduring legacy is seeing how each new generation of writers finds fresh, imaginative ways to revisit her stories. Some authors stay fiercely loyal to the original text, while others, like Amy George, dare to ask a very big, very provocative what if before tossing us into a much darker, magical twist on a classic favorite.
Okay, let's dive into this contrast and see exactly how the stakes have shifted from the traditional Regency manners you're used to this obsessive world of dark fantasy. In the traditional Pride and Prejudice, we follow a wealthy, sure, proud gentleman navigating a chaotic household of 5 sisters. But in His Dark Heart, that dynamic is entirely turned on its head. We are dealing with the Dark Prince of Pemberley, and a heroine who is now an only child. The polite disagreements of the ballroom? Yeah, those are replaced by literal manipulations of fate.
Section 1. The Dark Prince of Pemberley, Blackmail and Obsession. Let's start our character study with Lord Darcy.
Just like in the original, our story kicks off at an assembly where Darcy acts with absolutely zero civility or manners. But here, when the witty and popular Elizabeth Bennet is forced to put him in his place, challenging him like literally no one ever has before, it sparks something way more dangerous than Bruce Pride. It sparks a full-blown dark obsession. He decides he's going to do whatever it takes to have her, even crossing into the forbidden realm of magic. Now, what's really interesting here is that Darcy isn't magical himself. Instead, he blackmails a witch to win Elizabeth. He forces another's hand to use magic to manipulate fate and get exactly what he wants. But as we all know with great fantasy, magic always comes with severe consequences. The author describes this magical intervention as becoming an albatross around Darcy's neck. It's a heavy, inescapable burden of guilt representing the terrible, literal price he pays for trying to force destiny. Though, ironically, it's the very thing that ultimately helps shape him into the man he becomes by the end of the book.
Moving on to Section 2. A sharp-witted only child surviving a magical world.
So, how does the fiercely independent Lizzie fit into a world governed by spells and dark obsessions? Well, in this universe, Elizabeth is reimagined as a highly pragmatic only child. She accepts magic as just a fact of life because, frankly, she's smart enough to know there are things beyond her control. And actually, the author deliberately removed the other 4 Bennet sisters because, let's be honest, she felt there was already enough chaos in the narrative without adding them into the mix. Plus, instead of looking for a wealthy match, this Elizabeth is fiercely devoted to her childhood sweetheart George. She simply plans to marry him and live happily ever after. That is, until Darcy intervenes.
Which brings us to Section 3. Caroline Bingley, the Witch, a perfect casting.
Every good romantasy needs compelling antagonists, and the casting in this universe is absolutely inspired. Just think about Caroline Bingley from the original text for a second. Now imagine handing her supernatural abilities. I mean, Caroline's natural manipulation translates perfectly into witchcraft, right? The author describes her brilliantly. A manipulative witch. Not exactly evil, but not a good person. Amy George mentioned that taking Caroline's already calculating, status-obsessed personality and upgrading her to a literal witch just felt incredibly appropriate and made her so incredibly fun to read and write. It is such a clever way to honor the original character while fitting her seamlessly into this new magical framework.
Section 4. The Sultry Nightmare, Sensory Storytelling.
The story takes a distinctly gothic turn here. To really get a feel for this, picture a wine-induced Elizabeth relishing a solitary hot bath after waking up from a terrible, thrashing nightmare about a great black shadow. Seeking comfort, she drags her aching body into the water, but as she slips deeper, her mind totally betrays her. She is haunted by a brutal, smug vision of Lord Darcy appearing right behind her closed eyes. The text says his dark eyes glittered like chunks of obsidian. He leers at her with this lazy, arrogant drawl. In this terrifying vision, a panicked and bloody George rushes toward them. But Elizabeth is continually pushed nearer and nearer to Darcy, who casually tells her it is futile to resist her fate. It is such a chilling, sensual, and overwhelming sequence that perfectly captures the gothic dread of Darcy's magical obsession.
So this leaves us with a massive question. Will magic destroy this fragile couple? Darcy has used dark forces to bring them together, tearing Elizabeth away from the future she actually wanted with George. We are left wondering if the dangerous price of this magic will ruin them both entirely. Or if true love, whether it's her original love for George, or maybe a complicated, hard-won love with Darcy, can somehow triumph over this dark obsession. It's an absolute hook that just keeps you turning the pages.
Section 5. Behind the Pages, the author's journey.
Before we reach our spicy conclusion, it is absolutely crucial to understand Amy George and the intense personal journey behind bringing this book club selection to life. She actually learned her world-building and narrative pacing directly from reading Jane Austen. Austen taught her how to not rush a story while simultaneously helping her build her own incredible wit. But here's the crazy part. She had to overcome the profound heartbreak of having her manuscript stolen and plagiarized. Not once but twice. And it was deeply wrenching because the thief used her given first name, meaning it was done by someone who actually knew her. No way, right? That makes the eventual triumph of publishing under her own name a massive victory. It is a profound relief to see her work finally credited properly, showcasing an economy of words and a wit built directly from studying Austen's own genius.
Finally, Section 6, a very spicy verdict. What would Jane say?
Okay, we must finally address the elevated romance and high stakes that truly define the romantasy genre. His dark heart doesn't just play with magic, it cranks up the tension far beyond polite ballroom conversation. During an interview, Amy George was asked what Jane Austen herself might say if she could read this magical reimagining of her most famous novel. Her response, "Oh my." Given the high spice level, the dark magic, the leering visions in bathtubs, and the intense romantic stakes, you really have to wonder, would this provocative twist leave Jane Austen clutching her pearls or blushing and secretly begging for more? It's a brilliant reimagining that forces us to look at classic characters through a totally unrestricted lens. So, what do you think Austen would say? I'll leave you to ponder that. Keep reading, keep wondering what if, and we will see you next time on My Jane Austen Book Club.